The smell of burnt clutch fluid is surprisingly bitter, like roasting plastic and stale coffee. That was the first thing that hit me when I walked down to the apartment parking lot and found my sedan parked at a crooked angle, 2 inches from a concrete pillar. The second thing I noticed was the jagged silver scar gouged deep into the rear bumper. I stood there in the drizzling rain, water seeping through the canvas of my cheap sneakers, staring at the damage. The fuel gauge, visible through the driver's side window, rested dead on the red E. I marched back up the 3 flights of stairs, the damp chill in my bones rapidly turning into a boiling heat. I shoved the front door open. Vanessa was draped across our beige velvet sofa, mindlessly scrolling on her phone, a sheet mask plastered to her face making her look like a glossy, cucumber-scented ghost. I asked her what happened to the car. I didn't yell. I didn't scream, I just asked. She didn't even look up from her screen. She just sighed, a long, exaggerated sound that rattled with vocal fry. "Oh my God, you're so dramatic, it's not that serious." That dent was literally already there, and I was going to get gas, but the pumps were like super full. It wasn't already there. Just like the jagged, rainbow-colored spiderweb crack spreading across my laptop screen hadn't been there before she borrowed it to watch a movie in bed 3 days prior. When I confronted her about the computer, she had given me the exact same line. "You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. I'll pay you back." She owed me $400 in damages, gas money, and repair fees. I was drowning in the financial drain of her careless existence. The breaking point arrived 2 days later. The temperature had plummeted, frost clinging to the window panes. I went to the hall closet to grab the thick olive-green winter parka I'd scored online for a steal. The hanger was bare. When I asked Vanessa, she barely blinked over the rim of her matcha latte. She'd borrowed it yesterday. Left it draped over a chair at some artisanal coffee roaster 3 neighborhoods away. She forgot it. She told me I could just go pick it up myself if I cared that much, waving her manicured hand as if shooing away a fly. The trek to the coffee shop was miserable. The wind gnawed at my thin denim jacket, biting right through to my ribs. By the time I pushed open the heavy oak door of the roasted bean, I was shivering, miserable, and utterly defeated. The bell above the door chimed, a cheerful sound that felt entirely mocking. The air inside was thick with the rich, dark aroma of espresso, toasted hazelnut, and warm pastry. It was a haven, glowing with amber Edison bulbs and the low hum of indie folk music. I approached the counter, dripping wet, wrapping my arms around myself to preserve whatever body heat I had left. The guy behind the counter looked up, and for a second my brain short-circuited. He had messy, dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck, and eyes the color of steeped black tea. He wore a faded canvas apron dusted with flour, and there was a quiet, magnetic stillness about him. I cleared my throat, feeling incredibly uncool as a drop of rainwater slid off my nose. I explained the situation. The olive-green coat, the careless roommate, a slow, wry smile spread across his face. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. The muscles in his forearms shifted under his rolled-up flannel sleeves. "Ah," he murmured, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that somehow made the freezing walk worth it. "The legendary olive parka. I rescued it from a tragic fate involving a spilled cold brew. I'm Elias, by the way." He vanished into the back room and reappeared seconds later, holding my coat like a prized artifact. He handed it over, his knuckles brushing against mine. A sudden, sharp spark of static electricity snapped between us, warm and startling. I looked up, catching a flash of amusement in his dark eyes. "You look like you need something stronger than an apology from your roommate," Elias said, grabbing a ceramic mug. "Hot cider, cinnamon on the house. Consider it compensation for the terrible weather." I stayed for an hour. The cider was a liquid fire that thawed my chest, but the conversation did the real work. Elias was sharp, fiercely intelligent, and possessed a dry, biting wit that made me laugh until my sides ached. I found myself spilling everything. The car, the laptop, the $400, the endless, suffocating gaslighting. He rested his elbows on the counter, listening intently. The teasing glint in his eyes sharpened into something more dangerous, something mischievous. "You know," Elias said softly, tracing the rim of an empty espresso cup, "people like her operate on the assumption that you'll always play by the rules. The only way to stop a parasite is to make the host uninhabitable, or, at the very least, start biting back." He suggested a taste of her own medicine, nothing illegal, just a quiet psychological dismantling. We sat there plotting, the air between us thick with sudden camaraderie and an undeniable simmering tension. By the time I left, the rain had stopped, and I had his number typed into my phone. I also had a plan. Vanessa was fiercely territorial about only two things, her bedroom and her appearance. Her vanity was an altar stacked with hundreds of dollars worth of obscure, high-end skincare. Tiny glass bottles of serums infused with gold flakes. Moisturizers that smelled like crushed pearls and extinct roses. The next day, while Vanessa was out at bottomless brunch, I crossed the threshold into her sanctuary. The carpet was plush beneath my feet. I walked straight to the ensuite bathroom. I picked up a heavy, frosted glass dropper bottle. The serum inside was thick and iridescent. I squeezed 3 generous drops onto my fingertips and massaged it into my skin. It felt like liquid silk. I layered on a ridiculously expensive hydrating cream, savoring the cool, rich texture. I didn't stop there. I found her premium concealer, dabbing it under my eyes, erasing the exhaustion she had caused. For 2 weeks this became my ritual. Every time she left the apartment, I went shopping in her bathroom. My skin had never looked better. I was practically radiating light. My pores vanished. My complexion was a flawless, dewy canvas. Elias definitely noticed. We had started seeing each other almost every day. Sometimes I'd sit at the cafe while he finished his shift. Other times, we'd walk through the city parks in the biting cold, entirely warmed by the friction of our banter. One evening, standing under the amber glow of a street lamp outside my building, Elias reached out. His fingers were warm, slightly calloused from pulling espresso shots. He gently brushed a stray lock of hair behind my ear, his thumb lingering on my jawline. "You're glowing," he murmured, stepping closer. The scent of him, coffee beans and clean rain wrapped around me. "Revenge looks incredibly good on you." My pulse hammered against my ribs. I tilted my head up, the space between us shrinking to a fraction of an inch. "It's the stolen l'amour," I whispered. He laughed, a rich, dark sound, before dipping his head and pressing his lips to mine. The kiss was slow, deliberate, and entirely intoxicating. It tasted like cinnamon and absolute victory. When we finally pulled apart, I felt a surge of adrenaline so potent I could have lifted a car. It was time for phase 2. Vanessa had a collection of high-end athletic wear. Buttery soft leggings and breathable tops that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. She never actually worked out in them, she just wore them to drink smoothies and look superior. The next afternoon, I borrowed a matching pastel blue set. It fit perfectly. I met Elias at the local gym. We didn't hold back. We ran on the treadmills until my lungs burned. We lifted weights until my arms trembled. Elias spotted me on the bench press, his hands hovering over mine, his eyes dark and focused. The physical exertion, combined with the magnetic pull of his proximity, left me drenched in sweat. When I got home, I didn't wash the clothes. I peeled the damp, pungent athletic wear off my body, folded it neatly, and placed it right back into Vanessa's pristine drawer. I did this 3 times over the next week. Different outfits, same intense, sweat-drenched workouts, same exact placement in her dresser. The fallout was spectacular. I was sitting at the kitchen island, calmly eating a bowl of cereal when the shriek echoed down the hallway. It was a visceral, horrifying sound. Vanessa stomped into the kitchen, holding a pair of neon pink leggings at arm's length as if they were radioactive. Her face was flushed, her perfectly curated aesthetic completely shattered. "What is this?" she screamed, her voice cracking, dropping the vocal fry entirely. "My clothes smell like a locker room, and my serums are half empty. Have you been touching my stuff?" I took a slow, deliberate bite of my cereal. I let the silence stretch, savoring the frantic panic in her eyes. I swallowed, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and looked at her with dead, calm eyes. "Oh my God, Vanessa," I said, perfectly mimicking her dismissive drawl. "You're so dramatic." "It's not that serious, I just borrowed a few things. I'm sure the smell was already there." Her mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. She stared at me, searching for the pushover she had been exploiting for months. But that girl was gone. Replaced by someone with flawless skin, a killer new boyfriend, and zero tolerance for disrespect. She dropped the leggings on the floor, turned on her heel, and stormed back to her room, slamming the door so hard the framed art on the walls rattled. She never touched my belongings again. In fact, she barely spoke to me for the remainder of our lease. She slinked around the apartment like a ghost, hoarding her belongings in her room, terrified of what I might do next. 2 months later, my lease ended. Elias brought his truck around on a crisp Saturday morning to help me move out. He carried my boxes with effortless strength, flashing me that devastating, crooked smile every time he passed me on the stairs. We loaded the last of my things into the bed of his truck, leaving the beige velvet sofa and the toxic energy far behind. As I climbed into the passenger seat, Elias reached over, lacing his fingers through mine. The engine rumbled to life, a steady, comforting sound. I looked in the rearview mirror one last time, admiring my perfectly hydrated skin, and smiled as we drove away. Sometimes, the universe hands you a cracked screen and an empty gas tank just so you can finally learn how to steer your own life. We spend so much time shrinking ourselves to accommodate the toxic people in our spaces, terrified of causing a scene. But the truth is, the moment you stop playing the victim, the bullies lose their power. You don't have to tolerate disrespect to keep the peace. Sometimes, you just have to borrow their favorite gym clothes, work up a sweat, and walk away into a much brighter, much happier future. If you've ever had a nightmare roommate who pushed you to the absolute brink, drop a comment below and let me know exactly how you handled it. Did you get revenge, or did you just pack up and leave? Let's swap war stories in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the drama. See you in the next one.